Welcome to His Word Heals. You can also visit us online at www.hiswordheals.com. Today's message is part 2 of Loosing the Seals of Daniel's Visions. In part 1, we took a close look at why the 70 weeks, or Shabuim of Daniel 9, verse 24, could be translated as 70 countings of sevens and be referring to 70 sets of Jubilee cycles, which are 50-year time spans comprised of the 50th year after counting 7 sevens of years, or 49 years. 70 Jubilees would then equal 3,500 years. We also explained that verse 24's counting of years to complete all 6 goals of that verse could have begun immediately from the time that Daniel received this vision, and 24's start point does not necessarily need to be tied to the starting point specified for the 69 Shabuim in verse 25, which could be referring to a totally different period of time. All throughout Scripture, prophecy has a long plan and then a short plan. The long plan is always first, and you don't know the day or the hour that it's going to be fulfilled completely. And then the short plan is revealed after you get really close. And oftentimes it does let you know pretty close, if not to the day, that the plan will actually ultimately be fulfilled. So there's usually 2 timelines revealed in Scripture, a long plan and a short plan. For example, the long plan of Noah was revealed to him 120 years before the flood came. He knew it was going to come, he just didn't know when. But then the short plan was revealed to him 7 days before the flood came. Same thing with the Exodus from Egypt. The long plan was revealed to Abraham, Isaac, and then Jacob. As they got closer to going to Egypt, the plans became more distinct. Abraham saw it afar off, and Jacob actually went to Egypt. But still, it was a long plan, like the rest of 400 years, before they would know exactly when the Exodus was coming. Then, when Moses came back from the desert, he revealed the short plan, and they knew exactly when they were going to leave, the night of Passover. So same thing with all of Daniel's visions, actually, but Daniel 9 is what we're specifically dealing with today. The long plan is verse 24. 3,500 years that span all the way to the end of the millennial kingdom from when Daniel received this vision. Then the long plan of verses 25 through 27 was when Yeshua came the first time and would be cut off. Then the plan for many days, or the time of the end, as we are told in chapter 8, that fulfillment of verses 25 and I believe possibly 27 as well, were not to be revealed until the time of the end. That's the short plan. Instead of 3,500 years for the 70 weeks, as in verse 24 of chapter 9, we're talking an actual literal 70 weeks of days for verses 25 and 27 to actually be fulfilled in their end times version. No one knows the day or the hour, as Yeshua said. He was telling them the long plan there 2,000 years ago, that it would happen, but not for many days. But as we're getting closer, he is revealing the short plan, as revealed to Daniel, but sealed up until the time of the end. The short plan is being revealed right before our eyes, I believe, and perhaps it is a literal 70 weeks of days, until Messiah delivers his people, and then unleashes the great tribulation to cleanse his kingdom. Additionally, in order to accurately recognize the fulfillment of end times prophecy when it begins to take place, you need to be watching according to his appointed times, his feast days on the correct calendar, the one that Yahweh is using for his purposes, according to which, I believe, prophecy has already begun playing out, and that is on the Hillel 2 or diaspora calendar. In the days of Aaron, as high priest in the wilderness, the Israelites were to see whose rod, or almond branch, or watchman's rod, if you will, would actually bud. The word for watch and almond are spelled exactly the same. It is shakad, as in watch. Numbers 17, verse 8. And it came to pass that on the morrow Moses went into the tabernacle of witness, and behold, the rod of Aaron for the house of Levi was budded, and brought forth buds, and bloomed blossoms, and yielded almonds. And the word there for almonds is shakadim, H8247. From H8245, which is a primitive root, to be alert, i.e. sleeplessness, hence to be on the lookout, whether for good or ill, to watch. Aaron's almond branch, or shakad rod, was the one that budded, confirming that he was the correct authority chosen by Yahweh. According to Aaron's authority, the Israelites were to understand scriptures, times, seasons, etc. Therefore, by extension, in my opinion, on whichever calendar prophecy begins being fulfilled according to his feast days, that's the almond or watchman's rod that Yahweh has chosen. That would be the correct authority of the calendar. If you're not on the correct calendar, the things that are happening are not going to make sense. If you're not observing feast days according to the correct authority, the authority of Aaron's shakad rod, the watchman's stick, you're going to miss it. In today's message, we are going to move on to verses 25 through 27 of chapter 9, which we do believe have been correctly interpreted in the first coming of Yeshua the Messiah as Prince, and his subsequent cutting off or death in the midst of the week of years, or in the midst of the 7 years, for example, after a 3.5-year ministry. And perhaps has not only this historic fulfillment as weeks of years, but also can have an ultimate end times literal 70 weeks of days fulfillment, possibly coming very soon. I added this after watching the newest TorahFamily.org message on the 70 weeks of Daniel. Even though we don't agree completely with Steve on the prophetic or feast calendar currently being used by Yahweh to point to prophetic fulfillments, what he posited in this latest video points to and fits exactly in with our previous messages shared over the past several years, that the abomination of desolation could very well be on or very close to Yom Kippur 2026, all according to the Hillel II diaspora calendar, however. If we are correct in what we are about to share with regard to a literal 70 weeks of days count, then it is possible that Jerusalem will be the target of a very destructive attack sometime soon. Let's read Daniel chapter 9, verses 24 through 27. 70 weeks are determined for your people, that's Shabuim are determined for your people and for your holy city, to finish the transgression, to make an end of sins, to make reconciliation for iniquity, to bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal up the vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy. And we, again, in part 1, discussed verse 24 in detail, as it could be 70 countings of Jubilee weeks. But today's message is to show that actually the 70 weeks, again, could also be 70 weeks of counting of literal days at the very end, leading to the abomination of desolation. Continuing on in verse 25. Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the command to restore and build Jerusalem until Messiah the Prince, there shall be 7 weeks and 62 weeks, or 7 Shabuim and 62 Shabuim. The street shall be rebuilt again, and the wall, even in troublesome times, and after 62 Shabuim, Messiah shall be cut off, but not for himself, and the people of the prince who is to come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. The end of it shall be with a flood, and till the end of war desolations are determined. Then he shall confirm a covenant with many for 1 week, but in the middle of the week he shall bring an end to sacrifice and offering, and on the wing of abominations shall be one who makes desolate, even until the consummation which is determined is poured out on the desolator. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and play a short clip from TorahFamily.org's video, which explains why these could have the dual counting of 70 literal weeks of days, or 70 literal Sabbaths.
Contrary to what many believe, The prophets declare Jerusalem will be almost completely destroyed, and it'll be that destruction that ushers in the end times.
We agree here with Steve and are watching for an imminent attack on Jerusalem. Hence, we are creating this message as a warning.
There's a growing sentiment among believers that holds to the thought that Israel can do no wrong and Yahweh has their back. But I'm here to tell you, the prophets say otherwise. The prophets declare utter devastation is coming their way. I'm not here to say I have all the answers, but I'm here to tell you there's a lot of wrong beliefs being spread about, and they're only going to assist in the end time deception. Like believing the times and a half a time from Daniel is 3.5 years, though Daniel 12 specifically narrows it down to 3.5 Moedim, meaning 3.5 holy days, 3.5 appointed times. Many opinions abound regarding the 70 weeks of Daniel. But instead of dividing on the topic, maybe we should consider how they could all be right and overlay in perfect harmony. That being said, I believe we need to seriously consider how the 70-week prophecy of Daniel is talking about 70 literal weeks. I sincerely believe, especially when it comes to prophecy, many things will have various layers of interpretation to them.
And we agree here as well.
All being right at the same time, showing there are multiple ways for the weeks in Daniel to be understood and all be correct. That being said, I sincerely believe the 70 weeks of Daniel can be just that, 70 literal weeks, 70 literal 7-day weeks.
And here comes the really pertinent part that we're going to look at today.
But think about it. Shavuot is the Feast of Weeks. Why is it called Feast of Weeks? Because it's a time where we are to literally count weeks. So, again, I believe the 70 weeks given to Daniel are ultimately just that, 70 literal weeks, 490 days. Look at Daniel 9:24 with me. Notice the Hebrew word for what the English renders as sevens. This is the word that's debated here. Now, look at how the time frame that this word references continues to be referred to by Daniel in the following verses by other forms of this word, but all of them pointing back to the first form of the word in verse 24. The original word from verse 24 is referenced twice in verse 25. Once in verse 26 and twice in verse 27. It's referenced by these variations of the same word. That being said, take notice of this word in verse 25, referencing the original from verse 24. Now, let's move forward, ironically, 7 verses. We find this exact same word for sevens from Daniel 9:25, vowel point for vowel point, is only used again here in Daniel chapter 10. Verse 2 says, "At that time I, Daniel, mourned for 3 weeks. I ate no choice food, no meat or wine touched my lips, and I used no lotions at all until the 3 weeks were over." So, why do we say this very same word has to mean weeks of years in previous verses? If that's true, then Daniel fasted 21 years here in chapter 10. But we know this 3 weeks in Daniel 10 was only 21 days because of what's given to us here in verses 12 and 13. So, here's a word used in chapter 9 for sevens that literally means weeks, 21 days, just 7 verses later. Do we just ignore this? No.
So there you have it, the very real possibility that 70 weeks, or rather 62 weeks plus 7 weeks, could just simply be 69 literal weeks of days. And when we count weeks in Shavuot, as he pointed out, and as I pointed out, we count weeks of years for Jubilees. What are we counting? We're actually counting the Sabbaths, the weeks. The weekly Sabbath is what we're counting to go up to Shavuot. So this counting could be 69 Sabbaths. of days in verse 25 and 26, and 70 Sabbaths or Shemitas of years in verse 24, and possibly also a dual meaning of days and then also years in verse 27. So what I'm going to do now is place 70 weeks of days or 70 Sabbaths on the Hillel diaspora calendar leading up to Yom Kippur 2026, which is our plausible date for the abomination of desolation to take place. And we've shown why in many previous messages and videos. So you can go to our website and take a look at those. But we're just going to go on that premise here, and you're going to find this counting of weeks super interesting. If you're like me, I just like my mouth dropped when I saw what this actually pointed to. Okay, so first we're just going to take a quick look at our Revelation time chart. It has the signs in the heavens down here, and it's got the possible Revelation timeline for the last 7 years leading up to 2029, 2030, and we've placed for years now the possible abomination of desolation being Yom Kippur 2026, which is, of course, Tishri 10 in 2026, or September 21st, 2026 is Yom Kippur. And we can see here, if you plug in September 21st, 2026 here, you get Tishri 10, Yom Kippur 2026, and this is on hebcal.com's date converter. So now we'll go to timeanddate.com date calculator and put in September 21st, 2026, and subtract 70 weeks, and we calculated the new date, and 70 weeks prior to Yom Kippur, September 21st, 2026, is Monday, May 19th, 2025. And Yom Kippur, September 21st, is also a Monday, so exactly 70 weeks would be Monday, May 19th, 2025. So we'll go back to hebcal.com and plug in May 19th, 2025, convert it to the Hebrew date or biblical date, and you get ER 21, 2025. And of course, we all know if it were Nisan 21, 2025, the 21st of Nisan is actually the 7th day or the last day of unleavened bread. 1 month later, the 21st of ER would be the 7th day of unleavened bread after the second Passover, May 19th, 2025, exactly 70 weeks prior to Yom Kippur 2026. So let's take a look at the biblical diaspora calendar and plug these dates in. Here we have May 19th, 2025. Of course, May 12th, 2025 is the second Passover, and that would make the 13th the first day of unleavened bread, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th. The 19th is the 7th day of unleavened bread. So since the second Passover is here, then the first day after the first Sabbath following Passover, or the second Passover, would be the 18th. That would be the second Feast of First Fruits, followed the 19th with the 7th day of unleavened bread. Add 70 weeks to the 19th, and you get Yom Kippur 2026 again. And count the Omer after the Feast of First Fruits for the second Passover. And we have 1 Sabbath, 2 Sabbaths, 3 Sabbaths, 4 Sabbaths, 5 Sabbaths, 6 Sabbaths, and the 7th Sabbath following the second Feast of First Fruits would be Saturday, July 5th, 2025. So the second Shavuot would be July 6th, 2025. So that's coming right up here. Today is June 30th when I'm recording this or finishing this up. So this coming Shabbat, which is actually the day I'm going to post this online, would be the 7th Sabbath or 49th day after the second Feast of First Fruits, which is really interesting. So there you have one counting of 7 Sabbaths. Then if you continue counting and start again at 1, making the 12th of July the first Sabbath after the seventh Sabbath, and then you count another 61 Sabbaths after that for 62 Sabbaths, and you come to Yom Teruah 2026, the 62nd Sabbath after the 7 Sabbaths of the second counting of the Omer, or 69 Sabbaths from the Feast of First Fruits. You again come to Yom Teruah or Rosh Hashanah 2026. Then one more Sabbath to make the 70th Sabbath, September 19th, 2026. And the Monday following that is the 70th week after the 7th day of unleavened bread, but it is Yom Kippur, the Monday following the 70th Sabbath. So that's really, really interesting. You've got 7 weeks, the counting of the Omer for the second Passover, or 7 Sabbaths, 62 Sabbaths, and one more Sabbath, exactly as outlined in Daniel. So let's read Daniel again and see what's supposed to happen at the starting of these countings of Sabbaths leading up to the 70th Sabbath, if it is a literal 70 weeks. Daniel 9:25, Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the command to restore and build Jerusalem, so when the command goes forth to restore and build Jerusalem, and we know that already happened once with King Cyrus, and those were years, and the counting of those years actually comes out perfect for the time of the coming of Yeshua Messiah. But as we stated earlier, prophecy usually has multiple fulfillments. It's circular, and there is an ultimate fulfillment of this passage at the end of days as well. So we're looking at Daniel 9:25 as applying to possibly our time, the end of this age leading up to the millennial kingdom. There probably is going to be another destruction of Jerusalem in our day, and once that happens, there will be another command to restore and build Jerusalem again. So know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the command to restore and build Jerusalem until Messiah the Prince, there shall be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. And this could be Messiah the Prince renewing his covenant with us at the end of the age to protect us during the reign of Anti-Messiah, until we're told to flee when we see the abomination of desolation standing where it ought not in the holy place. There would be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. The street shall be built again, and the wall, even in troublesome times, or tribulation times. Then verse 26 says, after 62 weeks, Messiah shall be cut off, but not for himself. I think this one was fulfilled, of course, when Rome came in and destroyed the temple after Yeshua was crucified. But we're not going to really look that closely at 26 right now. We want to go ahead and focus on 27. I think 9:25 and 9:27 go together. Then he shall confirm a covenant with many for 1 week. But in the middle of the week he shall bring an end to sacrifice and offering, and on the wing of abominations shall be one who makes desolate, even until the consummation which is determined is poured on the desolate. So in verses 9:25 and 9:27, we have 7 weeks, 62 weeks, and then 1 more week, which is what we just saw on the calendar leading to Yom Kippur 2026. Which could be the abomination of desolations, after which the anti-Messiah rules and reigns for 42 months. And that is the Great Tribulation. And if we are of those that are fleeing, taken to a place of safety and provision by our Messiah, then we will be protected during that Great Tribulation if we are prepared, if we are one of the 5 wise virgins. So these 70 weeks could be shifted forward a few weeks. It's hard to say. It's possible that the abomination of desolation would be in the midst of the 70th week, meaning that they would be shifted forward 1 week. I don't know for sure, but I just find that it's really interesting. There are exactly 69 Sabbaths, 7 Sabbaths of the Omer plus 62 Sabbaths from the Feast of First Fruits of the Second Passover 2025 to Yom Teruah, the Feast of Trumpets, when the king is crowned in 2026. Just before Yom Kippur 2026, after the 70th Sabbath. Perhaps starting around July 5th or thereabouts, we could be looking at some type of attack on Jerusalem. So those of you who live in or around or near Jerusalem, perhaps this war with Iran is not over, and when Trump is saying peace, peace, there is no peace, or peace and safety, then sudden destruction comes upon them. So please be aware and be prepared. And if nothing comes of it, that's fine. This is just another theory. It's not a thus saith the Lord, but it is something to watch. Blessings and shalom to all of you and everyone in your home.